Brought to you by Raising the Vibe, a nonprofit organization supporting the growth of conscious communities.
Great. Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Raising the Vibe. I am Rebecca Paris-Becker, and I'm the founder and executive director of our nonprofit. We started just 2 years ago, and we are a connection hub for expanding consciousness, a place where individuals can find resources to self-actualize and connect with others to create a more joyful and harmonious world. We offer a free Zoom programming every month, and actually we had 2 this month, and so excited to have you with us. In the future, we're going to be having a talk on finding peace in the eye of the storm, and we also have Dr. Divinity talking about iridology, the secrets that you can find of your personality in your eye. So we are a completely volunteer-run organization, so I'd encourage you to check out raisingthevibe.org and consider joining as a general member or a business member. So again, thanks for being here tonight. Just a little bit about me. I had an awakening just about 3 years ago. I guess some higher part of me started asking questions that I ended up finding the answers to. One was, how does energy flow between all humans and all things? And another question was, what do all religions have in common throughout time and culture? So I set upon this mission to find out the answer. And a couple books were really crucial for me in my awakening process. And I really kind of started at the intersection between science and spirituality, because I really needed to have that logical part of me making sense of this before I could really jump into the more spiritual side. One of the first books was The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield, and it is a wonderful summary of kind of the things that I've encountered on the spiritual path. But he talks about the many insights that you come across, like synchronicities and energy and so many different things. Another one, which actually started our book club, was Dr. David Hawkins' Power versus Force. And we're going to be reviewing the scale of consciousness in this presentation tonight. But it was very instrumental to understand what consciousness is, because I had really never occurred to me to ask that question before. And another one was The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. So if you're just starting the path or well along it, I would encourage you to read those books. And it really helped me quite a bit. But before I started this nonprofit and the book club, I was very much engaged in what we call the matrix. And I defined myself by my roles that I took on. When somebody asked me who I am, I might say I'm an artist or a tennis player or a volunteer leader or a wife, a mother, mostly a mother, because I spend a lot of my time in that arena. But I became really consumed with my roles. But with this kind of a spiritual awakening process, I was inspired by just kind of listening around me to start this book club, and we did read Power versus Force. It quickly turned into the Facebook page, Raising the Vibe, which is a Facebook group, and then turned into a nonprofit 2 years ago. So I did, I guess, escape the matrix, but my matrix was a pretty good matrix. Last year, after a successful 26-year marriage, to a wonderful man, I decided to leave my marriage, a very good life by most standards, and move to right outside of Asheville and rent a townhome and walk into the void. And the reason I did this is at some point I realized my box, it just felt too small, and my soul was pulling me into a different direction to really discover and really actualize what I'm here to do on earth. And I think that is part of this spiritual teaching and pushing, moving, raising the vibe out further to help other people expand their consciousness. But I just felt compelled to make this change in my life because the new me didn't fit into the other me life. So I just felt like the box was too small. And that was people look at me like I'm crazy, like, why would you leave? But I am glad I did, because it really was crucial on this evolutionary path to expand my outreach and work as an artist. And I'm grateful I made this brave step. So I guess the bottom line is, for me, I felt like I had one door had to fully close before, and then step into the void, and then just allow the universe to bring what my next step was. And I ended up doing that, and I'm so grateful for that. And I guess I made the key realization that the most important relationship I have on this earth is the one with my own individual soul. And I'm the only one that can make myself happy, no matter how hard I try with everybody in my family or all my friends. I can't do anything to make them happy. And the only person I can really do something with is myself. So I decided to make that a priority. So with that, just as a little bit about my background and me actually stepping out of the matrix and just being thrilled about stepping into a whole new life. And my old life was also very, very wonderful. But anyway, with that, I'd like to introduce Robert Novak. He is an inspiring teacher, writer, master intuitive, and personal development consultant. You can find out more about him on www.robertnovak.com. So with that, I'll let him take you further into what he does and kind of center the group before we get moving further. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, so I do transformational work, right? Both with individuals and groups. And as many of you know that's on here, I love doing the live, group work, one-on-one, resolving things for people, pretty much immediately, which is, really wonderful, the openings that so many of us have shared together, because it really expands me, right, in those capacities, which allows me then to, do the workshops like Evolution of You and Increasing Consciousness, which is on our Social Chrysalis site. So I work with people to get them untangled, right, and align them with their divinity and their destiny. And as Rebecca said, I've written a few books, created some meditations that I think create wonderful openings and greater possibilities for people. And of course, I do intuitive readings and what I call unraveling stuck consciousness, improving one's life. Now, one of the other things that I love to do, when we begin some of the group things, I have people connect inside, right? So let's just go and do that. Just take a few seconds, up to a minute here, and connect inside. And here we're connecting also with source, right? So let's connect with source. So as we do that, right, the work and the explanations that we provide today will help, clear, purify, move things that need to be shifted here for everyone. So that's the dynamic of working together in a synergy space with all that is, right? So very good. So Rebecca, I'll let you take it from here.
Wanted to say that we really would love to have your questions, and I believe the best way to do that is put them in the question and answer. And we'll probably address those, as many as we can, at the end. Anything else about that, Robert?
Yes, and of course, at the end, in question and answer time, to raise your hand. We would allow you to speak on the audio, through the microphone if you wish to ask questions. That would be very beneficial for everyone involved, for sure.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna just share screen for a minute. Okay, so we talk about the Matrix. I couldn't help but pull this photo up about Neo. Most of you have probably seen the Matrix actually being unplugged from the Matrix, but it reminded me of kind of what we're talking about. All these energetic cords that were attached to Neo in his dream state are very similar to kind of the cords that we are attached to in our current life. And these cords could be the roles of I'm a mother, provider, whatever, or it's just all the programming that actually has gone into your brain, your biocomputer brain. And a lot of that was programmed early on in your life. So again, there's Neo. I'm going to stop sharing here. But I wanted to talk about some of Bruce Lipton's work, the author of Biology of Belief. And he, many of us are just so in our heads. But what does that really mean? A lot of the spiritual teachers you hear about, be in the now, be present, be mindful. But why? And he's determined that, about 5% of our day that we are conscious and we're moving forward in our hopes, wishes, and desires as the conscious mind is driving, when we're really here in the now, in our body, aware of what's going on in the outer world. But 95% of the time we're thinking, we're like, thinking about what we're going to do tomorrow, or regretting the past. And that thinking mind, you're going inside. And so what happens is your subconscious then takes over and you go on autopilot. And many of you have experienced this when you're driving and all of a sudden you don't even know where you are. And you're like, oh my gosh, I must have just driven, my subconscious has driven me where I needed to go. But when that happens, unfortunately, the subconscious programs start running, and we don't know and you're not really aware of what those are. Those are the things that you picked up that are those cords hooked into you that you picked up from your family, also some ancestral heritage. So 95% of the time you're running these programs that you don't probably wish to have running in your life. But when you're engaged in the now and the present moment, you're not looking in your head, and instead you're observing what's going on, and then you're in control. So that's why so many spiritual teachers really talk about just being here now and being present, so the subconscious doesn't start running your life. So how does this matrix get programmed? So Dr. Lipton explained that in the third trimester in utero and the first 7 years, we're actually in a brainwave called theta, which is really a hypnotic state. And it's like a video recorder or a tape recorder that just is programming in your environment. And the idea behind that is so you're prepared to, function in the environment you're born into. So it's observing your mother, your father, your family, and those programs just get recorded in. And a lot of those programs are, words, but it's also just, all the nonverbal communication that's going on, as well as the energy, the feel of the energy in the house. So much programming goes in on the early years, and that's why people are really having to deal with a lot of the childhood stuff that keeps coming up when they're trying to evolve. The subconscious also gets programmed by everything. We talk about like the food we eat, but it's so much more. It's like every person you're around has a frequency, and it's programming who you are. It's sound, movies, everything is really frequency, and it is programming into your life. So just think of like subliminal advertised on steroids. It's just all this subliminal stuff that is really controlling your reality, and you're just not even aware of it. So we're going to kind of bring some of that to light, and Robert's really going to talk about the matrix being an engineered reality. So go ahead.
Yeah, Rebecca, a couple of things of what you mentioned, and people that worked with me before knew this thing that I'm going to share. From, when we look at a child, from the time they're in the womb up to like 10 years old, they are actually, being, if you want to say, programmed by whomever they're around, mainly their parents, right? Which is not through what the parents are saying, or even, not only even, observation. It's just the, if you want to say, the consciousness between brains that's, shaping the child. Okay. And it happens just exactly that way. When I have to work on any child, I first have to see where the weakness may be coming from, if you want to say, the thing to resolve in the parent first before it can be resolved in the child. Okay. So we pick up that programming just, through the synergetics of our consciousness, which is very fascinating. But the other thing that I never really watched The Matrix until these last couple of nights. Rebecca said, if we're going to do something on The Matrix, you have to watch it. So I've watched the beginning of it before, but I actually had experiences of seeing The Matrix and how it, worked on a conscious, energetic level and then watched the first part of the Matrix, and then it's all I did, a few months ago. So I finally have watched it. So just so you know, but what we want to show tonight is various ways that we integrate and live in the Matrix via the identities and roles that we adopt, that we become to be a part of in what we call this reality or our real world. And we want to illustrate the frequencies we operate in that lock us into the Matrix, and that's, to me, one of the most important things to realize. Now, I call this matrix an engineered reality, because of our identities, we can be shaped, right? We can be steered, and our behaviors can be predicted to shape cultural or collective programming and conditioning. And the most important thing, though, is getting in the aspect of the individualized reality first, which is reflecting a reality created with you as creator with the infinite creator, or through your true source connection. So it's a really inspired reality, reflecting this passionate life expressing from that alignment and with source, very strongly, and not getting off into let's say the matrix dynamics. Right now, one of the things, just to give you a simple example, as I call it, like this engineered reality, is of course, when I grew up, boys needed to grow up and be providers for a family, and girls needed to get married, have children, and take care of the home and children, right? While the boy father worked to provide for this ideal, family, right? And, of course, in our culture, in our collective, when we get married, we take on the identity of a husband and a wife, which has cultural and collective personas, right? That we seem to adopt and expect to follow. And, or at least, these energetic consciousness is there that we are influenced by. So, in my opinion, the way we were intended to live on this planet is that, this constantly creating, planet, this universe, is through the creative insight and flow with our true source connection, which we are a spark of. In fact, I'm sure all of you have heard the question, who are you, right? Who am I? Well, my answer to that is you are a spark of the divine, an individualized aspect of awareness itself. So this divine, or this awareness that I reference, lives within you and through you. And it's a source connection that I want everyone, by the end of this, really understand that it's so important to connect very strongly and live from this place and be inspired by this creating influence that is not a learned behavior or an identity to be something in this false matrix or engineered reality. I mean, look, what we do with our children, right? We send them off to college to become something, right? An identity, a profession of some sort, so they can be, part of this, engineered world. So tonight, the goal is to bring, if you want to say, a lot more clarity, but freedom, right? To where we're not so influenced. And I know a lot of you, are pretty enlightened already, but I feel like we really nailed a couple things here. It's very important to share. And one of the things, when I look at what locks us into a matrix, one of the things is narratives, right? I mean, I've been watching, this past year, many narratives being heavily played out, right? In the past year and a half. And definitely, it's become, my realization that this has been something we've been subject to all these narratives for thousands of years. I mean, this really came, started to come into me even when I, traveling in Egypt, 3 to 5 years ago, when all kinds of realizations came in about holy, it was just amazing what was coming in. It's like, wow. But now watching these narratives, I could pull those together and say, wow, we have been definitely living, in this reality, this matrix for 1,000 years through these narratives that were through different, popular mediums such as religions and other ruling elite party agendas, right? So also as I looked around this world, the earth, we have many cultures canceled, right? As we have many ancient ruins. And I've also come to realize that our history over hundreds and thousands of years have been erased and rewritten. Just as being rewritten now, canceled or censored today via different agendas. We see it, right in front of our eyes. So it's really, quite interesting, which brings me to one of the major things I want to discuss, how each of us relate to authorities, right? Experts, leaders, a hierarchical structure. Now, and again, before I go there, I want to stress that everyone's destiny is unique to them, and to be completely forthright, your destiny is your divinity, right? To live your destiny, you have to live you. So your divinity, your individual relationship with source, the divine, right, is that which you are a spark of. It just proves that your divinity is truly whatever it is to fulfill your destiny, right? There's no religion, no authority figure, no other person is the deciding factor to what your divinity should be, right? Because it's an individual realization, on your own journey. It's between you and the creator, right? I mean, it's really that simple. So in saying that, I want to ask, I mean, can you be your own authority? Can you be your own expert? And can you be your own leader? Now, to be that, do you need specialized training to be your own authority, expert, leader? I know in the false matrix, you need training, right? Maybe a certificate to be recognized as an expert. To be an authority, maybe you need a position or a title, right? In some hierarchical structure. So you need to become an authority, right? And then to be a leader, of course, it's a lot of the same. And of course, you need someone or something to lead. So in saying that, ask again, I mean, can you be your own authority, your own expert, your own leader? Well, of course you can, right? And when you are in more of your innate core alignment with source, right? The creating influence that flows through you and that you are an expression of, you will realize that you have the authority and you will lead from that inspired place. Right? And when you do that, I mean, guess what happens? I mean, the source-filled creating universe responds, right? So when we look at one aspect of unlocking from the matrix, right? What are the things that needs to be resolved in us that keeps us hooked in this aspect that in relationship to authorities, experts, leaders, hierarchical structure? We got to resolve these entanglements, right? Then as we do, then we'll be able to settle into our own self-authority, right? And expertise and also leadership. So here's one thing that we can do to check that. So I want you to do this with me, right? Just, go ahead and connect inside. Just connect with yourself. And when you connect with yourself here and you consciously say, I want you to consciously say a few times, authorities, authorities. How is your body responding to that? What are you feeling? Authorities. Does your energy drop? Do you feel weaker? If it's weaker or if there's an ill feeling, right? Then you need to start resolving what's there. That you're reacting to. It's really that simple. And you can do the same little exercise with experts, leaders, hierarchical structure. And I would keep checking this over the next few days and weeks until there is a neutrality and an acceptance of what has been. Okay. And as you keep doing this little exercise, you will notice a change in you. And then you'll become more willing to be, right, your own authority, expert, and leader. Now, one of the things that you need to realize, with some of these hooks about authorities, experts, and leaders, is that they don't always have to do with someone else, right? There can be things coming up that you did or your ancestors did as an authority, expert, and leader. So in your self-clearing time, right, allow those times to surface and realize that you don't have to know specifically what the past times were, of yours or your ancestors. And in fact, I would steer away from connecting and having to know the specifics, because what we tend to do then is we tend to lock into that specific information, and we then get our consciousness stuck in time, in that reality, and we're trying to unhook things, right? So why go back and get stuck in this matrix reality time consciousness? Just let things come up and work. Now, you are trying to, of course, to detach, not to give yourself more reasons to attach to more info, data, and specifics, right? So in this clearing time, just do this. I mean, clear by connecting in the consciousness with grace and source, right? So connecting with source, allow the presence of all that is to be there. And as you're doing that, just connect with the knowing, we can say the intention, if you want to, say the prayer or command, however you do it, that you're clearing any and all times, over all time and space and dimensions, any hooks and transgressions that you have made as an authority, expert, or leader towards yourself or anyone or anything else. Okay, and then let the clearing happen. Don't rush it. Okay, don't rush it. Let the clearing happen. Let whatever you're going to experience there, right? It's really important. And this is why we bring grace and source in, because it's the real, shifting energy and power of all things. So the other thing to remember in this is, in these clearing times, do not judge, criticize, or blame yourself or anyone else for anything that comes to your conscious realization. Okay, because if you latch on to any of that judging, criticizing, and blaming, then you just got more clearing to do. And in some ways, maybe that's not such a bad thing, but at the same time, I would say don't do it, right? Now, when we look at identities, roles, and stereotypes, any of them could have a weakening effect, okay, because of the accumulated collective human experiences that are within the conscious history of any stereotype, identity, or role. So when we claim to be something, or we identify as something, or even if someone else projects on us as being something, I mean, there could be all kinds of assumptions about who you are based on that, right? And then expectations on how you should behave. So this, is even, when we look at, groups that we identify with, right? I mean, one of the things, if we just look at the friction around, you, let's say, identify as being a certain member of a political party. There's all kinds of assumptions made of what you must stand for then, right? And this whole thing of standing for and being a part of and everything else just locks you into this whole dynamic of this crazy energies that you don't want right now. That we're going to, explain even more some of the frequency aspects of what is going on to actually keep you locked into this dynamic. Now, also, within the collective, there are many times an unconscious conflict related to being constricted, right, and not really free because of limitations of living, let's say, in a stereotype persona, which isn't completely in alignment with the uniqueness of who you truly are, right? So what we have to look then at is, what this does to how we act and behave, right? Or maybe even, dressing like the stereotype or this identity, maybe to have to feel like you're fit in or a sense of belonging, right? So within the structure of the persona, the stereotype or identity or role, right? Now, many times one of the drivers that locks us into an identity or stereotype is, wanting to be accepted. And therefore simply are wanting to be recognized and acknowledged of being something, which is, let's say, more hyped to be something within this engineered reality or this false matrix. Now, one of the things that I've heard a term used is personality matrix, a matrix that's out there, with just what we're talking about in these stereotypes, identities, personality matrix, right? And it's being used as this energetic consciousness matrix that holds these identity programs, and they act like actually software programs that get implanted in us, or that we actually plug into that affects our behaviors, and again, our thinking, emotions, and our actions. So we got this personality matrix, but one of the important things of unlocking from the matrix, as we already discussed, is our relationship with authorities, experts, leaders, and the hierarchical structure. Okay, when we can start resolving those, that's one of the things that's going to help us to, become our own, divine self and really fulfilling everything we came here to be. So I know, Rebecca, you have some other things you really want to share along these lines that, of course, are very telling.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a lot. Thanks for sharing, Robert. So our ego or our personality is essentially the programmed self that takes on these roles of mother, wife, teacher, provider, and then we just start attaching to them because we want to fit, like we said, we want to fit into society. That's so important to have this belonging. So this is largely taken on from the information that was programmed on our tape recorder, the early in life, that this is, a lot of people get married and like have the number of children that they were in the same family with. I ended up having 2 children. I was a part of a 2-child family. It's just what you do. And you don't really even think about it so much because you're just in this water and it just seems to be the thing to do. So we can, you hear about, turned into my mother, and you really do. You often turn into your mother or you turn into your father. But what gets lost under all this program is the higher self or the soul that we're talking about. It's that small, quiet voice that's inside of you that you often don't listen to because we're just so busy running around fulfilling our roles. But it's the deeper level that really has your own grand plan for you, but we don't listen to it. So the ego, or the logically programmed mind, it was really designed to be more of the servant, to get out there and get things done. But what's happened is the logical mind just got way overplayed in the patriarchy over the last thousands of years and has really started running our lives. And the creative, intuitive side, the more feminine, receptive side, has been completely lost pretty much over the last 1,000 years. And we don't respect people who, it's a gut feeling, and because the logic has taken on the big authority here. So unfortunately, the side of us that's really intuitive and creative gets lost. And what I think we're coming into now is realizing how much intuition has more of the answers than the logic side. And it's really more heart-based versus mind-based. So I wanted to really talk about one of the roles that I think is key for so many of us probably on this call is the role of a mother. And it has so much baggage attached to it because we often feel that as a mother, we just need to be completely self-sacrificing. And what is a good mother? A good mother is someone who is, takes their needs second, that puts the child first, does everything for the child. And often we want to make these children like a mini me, and it's like, well, they're an aspect of me, and we don't even realize how much we're projecting our own desires onto our children to get them, a good education or whatever that may be. And then what I found myself is I just ended up doing way too much for my kids. I never really broke when they got older. I never broke away from doing so much, like always cooking them dinner and making sure that they did their schoolwork. And unfortunately, I owned more of their life than they did, and that caused some codependency issues and really had them kind of step back. And I was just overdoing because I just wanted it done the way I wanted to do it, and it seemed like it was easier for me than them. But I regret that because I really had to spend a couple of years really unwinding how much I did for the kids. And it really does them a disservice. I'm not only exhausted, but they aren't really, we're robbing them of the experience of learning these things on their own. There's a book called The Blessing of a Skinned Knee, and it's just having them make their own choices and failing when it's not as disastrous as when they're in the adult world. So this mother role is really has so much to it. But I would really encourage mothers, especially to, you say, you've heard this, put your own oxygen mask on first, but it is so true, because if you're so busy being depleted by running them, they're just going to get like a really much poorer version of you, because you're going to be yelling and frustrated and so forth. So another guy who's been in Raising the Vibe had this great analogy of this, and he talks about the bonfire and how each individual soul needs to create the biggest light they can with the most joy that's innately in them. And it's creating this huge bonfire of what they want to create on the earth. And what happens is when your child is struggling, most of us will leave our own bonfire and we'll go help try to get them their kindling going and blow on it. And then what happens is we go down in frequency and we're trying to help them, and then we get frustrated and we're down in the muck of their issues, and we've owned their issues. And then we get back and our own bonfire is gone, and then we have no light or energy to do much for them or ourselves, because we've been so busy trying to solve their problems. And so anyway, I would encourage you to really, it really has to do with self-love and keeping your own bonfire lit. Another thing is, we all have a unique spark of the divine, as Robert said, and our true joy, in our true joy, we raise our vibration through this, from that space. And by doing that, we are able to lift up others. There's things like mirror neurons, which, when I'm happy, then this is going to really cause my whole family to be happy as well. And they can look at me as a role model and say, oh, mom's really doing a lot for herself. I want to emulate that in my life. And I really want to make my own joy and be free and live my own life. So you don't realize, you think you're doing your child a service by sacrificing for them, but it'd be much better if we were able to just live our own true selves and then have them watch that, and they can come over to our bonfire and say, wow, how'd you like that bonfire? Show me what you're doing, Mom. So anyway, with that, I'd like to pass it back over to Robert to say a few more things about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the aspects of my sessions that I do is, of course, lightening my clients' concerns, and their anxiety or stressors of life. And one of the things that I hear from moms many times is they just want to be safe and they want their children to be safe. Well, it's not really what's bothering them, because at the time of working with them, if it was really bothering them, their energy would go weak, but it doesn't. So even though they're saying it's all about safety, it is not. Now, of course, it totally makes sense that you want your children to be safe and, and everything else. Got it, agreed, right? However, in these cases, working with these moms, 100% of the time, there is actually a deeper, unrecognized concern driving this thought related to being safe. And it is one of the most important points of tonight's event. So 100% of the time, the underlying driver was, for the mom, was not wanting to experience shame, blame, or guilt. Okay, so when looking at things and asking the mom a little bit more, like a question like, well, how would you feel if something happened to your child or children? I mean, the responses, of course, were, oh, I would feel so guilty, right? Or I would suffer such criticism or blame from people close to me. I would feel shame. I could have done more. So with them, we of course start clearing away the conscious energetic attachments to their previous experiences of feeling shame, blame, and guilt. And this is any life experience. It's just not related to their children's, any life experiences. Okay, and this is experiences that are actual experiences or observed experiences of others, whether it be real life or in a movie. And I want to harp on something here related to movie or media input, because we take it for granted that what we are watching is not affecting us. It's just make believe, right? Well, we experience a movie, right? I mean, and anything we experience, real or imagine, sets our conditioning. And on top of that, through all experiences, we set parameters of living, right? Beliefs are formed via the experience input. And we create what I call constructs, mental or emotional, if you want to say, remembrances of how to be or not when other similar situation arises. Now, once we started resolving these things related to the experiences, beliefs, or any negative emotions related to shame, blame, and guilt for the mom, then safety was not as pressing of an issue. Now, I'm going to have, ask Rebecca to go through the Hawkins map of consciousness, so then we can highlight even more of the key frequency patterns that keep us locked into the bandwidth of the false matrix.
Great. Well, yeah, I think you guys didn't see it on the screen here. Many of you have seen this, but this was really crucial for me to really understanding consciousness. And basically, so Dr. David Hawkins started with using muscle testing or specialized kinesiology to know when something goes weak or strong, and did these tests. For example, like they had a sugar substitute that wasn't good for you, and then everybody, like they had this whole group, and everybody, when that sugar substitute was close to them, they kind of backed away. They were going weak. Their muscles is like, I don't want that. And then like some healthier vegetable or something, then they would go strong. So our body really is telling us what is good and what is not good, what is pro-life and what is anti-life. So with this, he created this chart, and enlightenment is really the 700 to 1,000 level. And I believe that Jesus and Buddha came in at 1,000, and they're like the highest of enlightened. But what happens is, like on these lower level frequencies, so the lowest is shame. And then you are really operating at a really low level at shame. And then just up from that, guilt, apathy, grief, fear is at 100. Desire is like, I want to do something more. Anger is higher because you have a little bit more energy to actually get things moving. And then pride, and then courage. So really at that 200 level is really the neutral point. Anything below 200 is anti-life. So you'll be, if you're vibrating lower than that, it is really into the negative frequencies. At about 200, you're neutral, and then you move into our 250s neutrality. Then willingness, acceptance, reason, which is more the logical mind and understanding. But 500 is a key to get into the love, and then you go up to joy, peace, and enlightenment. You can see the emotional states associated with some of these. And it's what your view of life is, from miserable to it just is. It's just bliss. It's all oneness. So it's a great way to kind of look at it. And you see shame, blame, guilt, apathy as just being in those lower levels. And all of us are experiencing that. And that's what's really kind of this is what's keeping us locked into the matrix with all these programs that are running that, oh, you should feel guilty for not, for, spending time out and not being with your children, or you should be ashamed of yourself for not going to church, or whatever. People say that it's almost like casting a spell on you, and it's like, oh, I should be ashamed, and then that's just kind of resonating with you, and your subconscious is running your reality. So you're in these lower areas, and you can see what's going on right now. There's so much fear that is at 100. And, that's not even near, that's anti-life. And that's something that we really need to be looking at is, the fear of the virus and whatever else is going on is really keeping your immune system down. And you're, unable to really fight it naturally when you're just living in this fear range. So, yeah, Robert, is there anything else, that I missed on this chart or that you want to review?
Well, not in particular, but I definitely have more things I want to share related to, the lower frequencies for sure.
Do you want to stop sharing, or would you like
Yeah,
to chart up?
go ahead and stop sharing. But, so as Rebecca was, indicating, shame is at a frequency of 20, guilt and blame at 30, right? And fear at 100. And of course, right now in the world, people reference that as fear that is driving, people and society to comply with the suggestion of experts because of this fear. Now, I look at it that it's not just fear, even though fear is a huge factor. I believe it's shame, blame, and guilt, right? And I also firmly believe that these three lower frequencies are the energies that power any mechanism they employ that binds and keep people and humanity locked in this false matrix, this engineered reality. So fear definitely amplifies the tactics employed, right? Because people fear any experiences of being shamed, blamed, and made you feel guilty because, of course, it's very troublesome. Of course, people don't want to experience that, right? They fear it, so they'll comply. So it's almost like an amplified effect, fear on top of this shame, blame, and guilt. So to me, these three lowest frequencies is the thing that lock us in and influences our behavior to become more subservient. And I want to really drive this point home, because if we look at some of the narratives that have been out there for thousands of years, one of the historical ones that we can look at is, especially that you become aware of in our healing circles, is someone that has been raised Catholic. They always talk about guilt, right? And so that's, real, big indicator of how it's been played out. And also, if we look at the beginning of, this supposed pandemic or whatever you want to call it, you heard, this aspect of being said at the beginning: if you don't wear a mask, you're going to kill someone, right? So you feel this blame and potential guilt. And now look at all the shaming that is going on about being identified as part of a group or some sort of divisive classification, right? So if we look then here at fear, this frequency is 100, which is 5 times higher than shame, right? So in my opinion, again, these matrix controllers keep us locked in because of these issues we have with, shame, blame, and guilt. So a primary key to unlock from the matrix is resolving your experiences with these 3 lower frequencies, these negative emotions. So we all need to resolve them. And this includes all conditioning and beliefs that trigger or bring up any reaction that makes us go, I will feel so guilty if this happened. I'll never forgive myself. I would be so ashamed. I don't want to be blamed, right? All this is very rational but it's not necessarily about rational reasoning. This is about freeing stuck energy in our consciousness so it doesn't resonate those frequencies anymore and keep us locked in when we're ready to rise to a whole nother thing, right? So this does not mean that we'll never experience these frequencies, but when we do experience them, we want it to be a new experience and not through the intensity of them accumulating in our experiences and all our attachments to our experiences, right? So we want to make sure we clear these things away. Now, I want to make a couple more key points here. that, to explain some of the things I'm talking about. Now, one example that I love sharing, which Rebecca referred to, is the good mom driver. And of course, there are many moms that, they're really intense about and have a strong push to, being a good mom, right? I have to be a good mom. And that totally makes sense for sure. But the concern is the level of the intensity of the drive, right? And many times that intensity of the drive is being enhanced by not wanting to experience shame, blame, or guilt, right? So I fully understand not wanting to experience those as well, but that's why it's so important to start working to remove those things so you're more neutral in the experiences of life. You don't have these stressful drivers, right? Because if you want to be at peace, which is a level of 600, you're not going to, get to that or love if you're avoiding, feeling these lower frequencies. And realize this avoidance technique, indicates that you're not even at the level of 250, which is neutrality. Now, you may get to the level of 200, which is courage, but perhaps not above 250, or above, because we're not neutral to the lower frequencies, right? So we have to resolve these hooks, the beliefs, any social and religious conditioning related to shame, blame, or guilt. And doing this will ensure that you unlock from the control limitations of the matrix. And this is like one of the most important things that I can share is related to that. Now, I also want you to check to see if you have a belief that would kind of, look like this, meaning like, I'm not a good person if I don't feel this way. And that could be any way that someone is trying to have you feel, or maybe, in their different sharing or scenarios that, where they want you to get into the lower type of frequencies with them, right? So we need to check our beliefs that, I'm not a good person if I don't go there, right? But what I want to stress here is, and something you need to realize, is that you, me, we are inherently good. And it is because we are inherently good that goodness can be turned on us, right? And realize also that there are players in the matrix that benefit using the matrix conditioning, like, political correctiveness, right? And other ideologies and even identity politics. So realizing you're a good person, if you react in a way that you start to feel some of these lower frequencies, shame, blame, or guilt, I mean, it just proves your goodness. So knowing this, knowing that you're good, in these situations, just pause, right? Recognize that there might be a tactic at play. Acknowledge how you're feeling, smile, right? And don't go and stay there in those lower frequencies. All right. So really a key point, know your goodness, and because you are. Another thing I tell my clients is to approach life from a sense of play, right? And here, perhaps a sense of play is at the level of joy of 540. So when we're at that sense of play, I mean, we can tackle these things coming at us, even the situation with people and everything else, which is really a lot of fun. So stay, there in that, aspect of things, and it's a whole lot, better of dealing with, people and things that might be trying to, limit you or put you in a box. So I know, Rebecca, you wanted to share, some other things related to this.
So when we, think about enlightenment, at the level of 1,000, it's not all of a sudden just being wise and just seeing the light. It's really about coming back to your true nature. It's already there, and it's getting rid of the dark clouds that are really preventing the light within you to shine. And these dark clouds are these lower frequencies. And a lot of the lower frequencies are stuck in your body, and your body just kind of takes care of it. And it's really there until you're able to pull it out and to consciously process it. Because what we do is we shove down, I don't want to be angry. Angry's bad. but what happens is your body holds it, and then you get sick or, you know, whatever, because it's not a healthy frequency to be there. So you really just need to sit with it, feel the anger, right? Hopefully not yell. I mean, I've just really lost it, you know, but it felt really good at the time. But feel the anger and then let it move from your body. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm really feeling that anger, and then just let it move out. But all this stuff really does need to be unlocked from your body that's just holding it there, waiting for you to acknowledge that. And again, similar to the enlightenment comment about removing the dark clouds, I think Jesus had a famous saying that we first need to take the beam out of our own eye, and then you will clearly be able to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And we tend to look at all the things in the world as other people, but we're only in charge of our own consciousness. And by us changing, that will change the others around us. And this has happened in my life with me owning my life, feeling more in my joy. And at first there was just a lot of chaos with my family, with the big change that I had, and, you know, making my interest the priority for me, and not, like, you know, taking care of everybody else's needs. And it was chaos. It was chaos for about 6 months. And then, so instead of plugging into me, they were really, like, literally just thinking of, like, putting their energy and using my light and my energy to run their own lives. And then I said, no more, and I need to have my own life. And then they had to unplug from me. But then they were able eventually to realize that they had their own energy, their own self. They could plug into their own identity and are happier than ever now. I'm so happy to report that, you know, it was a little bit of a struggle with this change, but they're finding their own identities. And when they're plugged into the mom, they don't do it because they don't have to. But sometimes when one changes, then the whole system will change. So when you realize you're an immortal spark of the divine, you cannot fear. So I guess when I realized the two big freeing things for me was I stopped caring, you know, somehow I was able to stop caring what other people thought. I was just brave enough to realize my own truth and say, oh, okay, well, you know, I can't please them. There's no, you know, no matter what I do, I'm not going to please everybody. So I must, you know, the only thing I can do is please myself. And when I released that and released judgment about my move and the divorce and everything, it was so freeing. And then you can just feel like you can do whatever. And the other thing I found is the most freeing is when you really connect in with yourself, you know that you're really just an immortal spark. We're not really going to die when our body dies. And when you don't fear death, then everything frees up as well. So if you could, you know, I know it's kind of a hard ask, but it really is the most freeing thing to say, I'm here, I'm going to live my truth, and I'm just not going to fear what people think or fear my mortality. So with that, I think you had any other closing things?
Absolutely. So of course, you know, we need to resolve our lower, denser frequencies, right? And when we do, we are going to be less influenced by outside agendas. And you know, realize that, you know, there are limitations with any stereotype, identity, or role you identify as being, right? Because there has been historical stuff about it. You know, you can actually look at each of them kind of like, you know, software, right? That once you step into any of them, you're stepping into a program, a consciousness structure, a reality structure in this matrix we identify as our human reality. That currently plugs into, again, like this personality matrix, right? Which can be limiting because it has the energy, the consciousness of many human life experiences and characteristic parameters defining your expected behaviors and potentials, right? So you definitely, it's like stepping into this program persona that, you know, will limit your full potential because it's not tied, if you want to say, into this alignment with the divine matrix or the soul matrix, or a live feed of creation flow with the creator, right? So, you know, one of the things I advise doing is just asking yourself, you know, about some identities and roles. I mean, ask the question, what are you known as, right? What do you call yourself? What do others call you or identify you as, right? Is this who you really are? So really going into those aspects and then start looking at how you react to them, right? Who do you know yourself as? What do you call yourself? What do others identify yourself as? And then, what you do from there, to be able to help resolve all this. I mean, acknowledgement or acknowledging equals freedom, right? It's a key. So you cannot numb, deny, lie, or suppress, ignore, and think that you don't have to do anything, right? Increasing consciousness means you raise in the vibrational frequency, and it is removing things to help you to get there, right? And so be it. And so this means that our recordings of life, our consciousness that may still be looped in, if you want to say, to different emotions and beliefs of these lower frequencies will keep us there, right? So it is right here and now possible for humanity to totally step into a whole nother timeline of existence. And this is why we're doing this, why Rebecca got the inspiration of doing this, because we really felt that we needed to say, geez, I mean, these things are locking us in, these major things and these lower frequency emotions. We got to get out of it. Plus, we need to look at the authority, expert, leader thing, and then get in our alignment. And this is one of the next things I want to really stress, because it's super important, if not the most important thing to do. And it's what I call connection practices, or this source connection, right? And one of the things Rebecca and I have been doing has been listening to the Oracle Girl. And I took this from one of her recordings, this excerpt, and it relates to connecting, right? Source connection. And here's what she says. She says, real silence is really active. And when it's at the right frequency, it automatically switches you on, and your self-healing ability will start to strip out the conditioning, the dense accumulations automatically. And the more we can work with that real silence, the better. So it is not about learning or a technique or finding out what to do. You got it already in you. In the space of connection and real silence, you are a purifier within the space of presence. Your ability to purify increases as your frequency rises and maintains a certain level. And once it does, that innate knowledge takes over and you start to upgrade so that your whole multidimensional self walks in. That multidimensional self, which has been locked out of this reality for the large part. Your biology starts to upgrade, and then that bigger part of you can literally mesh with physicality, and you become the massive antenna that connects through all the spaces and time currently converging on this reality, right? So this is the other major thing that we need to do to unlock ourselves from the false matrix, okay? Connecting and settling into real silence at higher and higher frequencies. So Rebecca, I'll let you close it out, or start asking people they want to ask any questions, raise their hands, or whatever else.
Well, thank you, Robert. Hopefully this was helpful for everyone. So glad to have you guys here, and I'd love to have you guys ask questions, put it in the Q&A, raise your hands, because really want this. The interaction part is always a lot more the real meaty part, when we can really just talk about real life issues that you all are facing. So please don't be shy and ask some questions.
Absolutely.
The chat was, yeah, Sherry said, I've discovered Oracle Girl recently. I love the quote you read. Yeah, it's amazing how we just kind of, whenever we're at the right stage, the teacher arrives, and so many in our community are really sharing that as well. And we've been doing it in our Raising the Vibe Wednesday member circle, and sharing some of the things that she's brought forward in her meditations and her YouTubes.
Yeah, so Rebecca, Sherry has her hand raised, so I'm going to allow Sherry to talk here. So Sherry, your microphone is on.
Hey guys, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much for so many nuggets in here. I've been taking some really good notes and just want to go back later and read through them. I wanted to ask a question. Robert, you earlier was talking about fear when we were looking at the consciousness scale, and said, around the coronavirus, that about mask wearing and things, like if you're in that fear space, that you're at the lower consciousness. I wear a mask and I social distance, and for me it feels like it's totally from a love space. So it doesn't matter about the intentionality, because it could be the same action or an opposite action, and yet I'm not afraid of the virus. It really is a love for humanity. So how would you describe that?
Exactly, and I don't disagree with you. In fact, the point I was making was the stressing at the beginning of it, to where if you don't wear a mask, you're going to kill someone. That's what I kept on hearing. So that messaging, bringing in the blame or guilt scenario. So yes, I totally get it. I wear a mask, when I'm out there in the public for a lot of the same reasons. Okay. But it's from that place. So I agree with you.
Yeah. My son just told me today, he's a 20 something. And he said, because I haven't noticed this, but in his world, he said that there's so much shame out there, shaming other people for the whatever choices that they're making around that. And I said, oh, that's interesting, because I don't see that as much, but he sees that a lot with his peer groups. So thank you for bringing that in, Robert.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Sherry, because there's no question that what came to my realization, because I've never really studied the map of consciousness. It's really just come into my, view that this past, month, really. And it's not like I haven't heard certain things about it, but when we started, following, some intuitive secrets of a person, he was bringing up this map of consciousness quite a bit. And then when, Rebecca had this hit that we needed to do this workshop, and I started, putting things together, it just all came in. It's like, wow, that's the locking mechanism, which happens a lot for me, when, the work I do with people and groups, especially the evolution of you group that I was, doing for a year and a half or so. Things came in that needed to constantly be, talked about. So this is no different. And I firmly believe that it is these lower frequencies that, gear everything related to the control aspect of, societies in the matrix. So yeah, thank you, Sherry. Anyone else, please raise your hand, questions. We'd love to hear it, for sure. And, I want to stress also related to, leaders and authorities and experts. I mean, when you, sit with yourself and clearing that, really get to the place of acceptance of what has been, right? That neutrality and acceptance of what has been, so that you know that you are free of that. So then you're working with the new dynamics at all times. And right now it's all about the freedom and resonating from that higher frequency and stepping into a whole other reality, because I guarantee it's happening. There's no question about it. And we want to make sure that we keep, doing that. Wonderful. Any other questions, comments? Raise your hands for sure.
While we're waiting, wanted just to mention that an Einstein quote that I love, which is, you can't solve a problem at the same level of consciousness that it was created. And so when we're just in the muck trying to fight the us versus them, the tribalism, it's not going to go anywhere, because it's just resistance on resistance. And I know, Sherry, you agree with this one as well. It's just, you can't, fight hate with hate. And it has to really be about neutrality. And that's what we're really talking about here. And, seeing the dark side, but allowing it to purify through us in a more of a neutral space, because that's how we're really going to dissolve it. We're going to dissolve it with just our love space, and it will actually transmute some of those frequencies instead of trying to fight it. So just want to mention that.
Right. And I got another hand raised here, but, Rebecca, one of the things that, the Oracle talks about in this source connection and purification space is that we can bring others in that, right, to help purify them. Now, we can't make the decisions, it doesn't mean they're going to change overnight in doing that. But every little bit that we can bring, someone into that purification space, that connection, source connection place that we're at, right, can benefit them as well. So just want to bring that up. But we got a hand raised here, Diane. So we're going to, Diane, we're going to allow you to talk here, pressing the button. So
Okay.
there you go. Hi, Diane.
Hi. My question has to do with real silence and that connection. It made me think that you have to meditate right off the top of my head. Are there other ways where you can reach that real silence without going into meditation?
Well, I'm going to sit here and say not necessarily. It could be, but that's what I, connect it with from that, real silence. I connect with it in the aspect of, the, the 0 point energy, right? That whole aspect that when you're in that 0 point or that stillness where it seems like nothing's happening, a lot is happening. So to me, it's very necessary because things seem to happen without us trying to make it happen. So in my opinion, it is necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Any other questions or comments? Love to have them. Even share different things that you have realized that's happening, either to support or challenge what we're saying here. By all means, for sure. Because everything that we bring up benefits all. And there's definitely a lot of things happening out there. All right, Rebecca, we might want to just go ahead and start wrapping up. Make sure everyone knows about, Raising the Vibes, events coming up here and all the things that you have going on. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah. So hopefully if you sign up for this event, you'll be on the Raising the Vibe mailing list. We send out event notifications, and we have them at least once a month. And members are also, if you join, and it's just $25 a year or $75 per business membership, can be invited to our Wednesday spiritual circle. And this has been something that's been really important for a lot of us to really have a forum to really share this type of work and these kinds of discussions. And it's kind of almost a personal support group for, like, if you're feeling alone and you're the only one that's kind of seeing the larger reality, and the rest of your family and friends just think you're crazy, this is a place to come to feel at home and to feel connected to other open-minded individuals. So I'm encouraging you to join Raising the Vibe and connecting with us for that. Again, the next speaker is Ursula Lentini, March 24th, I believe, and she's going to be talking about finding peace in the eye of the storm. And again, we really can do that no matter what's going on in the external world, with our own connection and meditation and just silence and just being with our own source. We can find peace, and it is possible. We don't have to tune into so much of the craziness in the world. We're going to have iridology, personality that you can find information in your eyes. So it's going to be fascinating subjects. But again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Check out raisingthevibe.org. We have a lot of resources. All of our past speakers are on there. And so you'll find a lot of information to help you awaken in your path and co-create with others. So thank you very much.